Hello and welcome to Learn in Public with Doug and Erik. I'm Doug.
And I'm Erik.
And on this show, Erik and I keep each other up to date on how each of our online creative businesses are going. We support each other in each of our journeys in these conversations that we hope are helpful to you, the viewers and listeners who are also on your own creative journey and perhaps entrepreneurial journey. Today is episode 9 of our show here. I'm in the hot seat this week, so I will throw it to Erik to share a bit of an update first.
Hello, Doug. It's been a good week. Busy. I've been dealing with a lot of logistical issues, like thinking about maybe moving the podcast to a different host, and and these meetings, I always feel like, I didn't ask enough questions, or I asked the wrong questions, and then I wake up in the middle of the night and go, what about this?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to sort all those out and keeping notes while still kind of keeping going on developing all the creative stuff and hoping to squeeze in a vacation at the end of December. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. So, one of the things I'm realizing is that at times like this, I can start to feel a little overwhelmed, and I'm like, I'm just working all the time. Even when I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm going, I need to write down a note about this thing. So today I decided this afternoon, after my last meeting around 1:00, I'm heading out for the day. I'm going to make it a short day. I'm going to have the time freedom that I do this for. Because while I love the creative aspect and I love working for myself, one of the main reasons I got into this was so I could have my own time freedom. And at times like this, especially when I probably shouldn't, is when I try to go, I'm gonna just take the afternoon off. So that's kind of been what my week has been like a lot of work, and now it's going to be like a little midweek break, which is important for me.
Love that. Yeah, and I think that's why a lot of us get into doing something more entrepreneurial or something that we have more control over, is because of that time freedom. Yeah, and how easy it is for all of your time to get sucked up if you let it, because there's always the next thing that you could be doing to improve your business, to improve your creative skills. It's really easy to just kind of suck up your own time. So I'm glad you're going to be taking the afternoon off.
Thank you.
Building that in. I like that. This relates a little bit to the update that I will share today, if it feels like a good time to hop into that.
Yeah, hop right in.
Because it does have to do with how I might spend my time. Potentially a slightly new project that I might want to spend some time on.
Do tell.
So generally, this topic of when to start something new is a big one for, again, anyone doing creative work or having an entrepreneurial mindset, because there's always ideas for new projects, new businesses, new angles, new things. They come up all the time, and it's hard to know when to pursue them and when not to. Even our conversation 2 weeks ago, we were talking about Mighty Networks, and and the idea came up for me to start a new YouTube channel about Mighty Networks, just sharing my experience with it, and it being good timing with Mighty Networks transition to the Spaces model, and hey, there's an opportunity there. And in the moment, I was really excited about that. That'd be a great new project. But then later that day and the next day, I was like, man, that'd be, it would take a lot of time and effort to get that started. It would take maintenance time. Do I want to become a Mighty Networks expert? So that one, with a bit of reflection, felt like a new project that wasn't worth hopping into, not at this time at least. And then there's this other one that I'll describe that I got excited about. But just this morning I read an article from Tara McMullen, whose podcast I listen to, or now she kind of writes she has a podcast called What Works, about entrepreneurship and creativity. She also just came out with a book called What Works that I'm sketchnoting right now, and that we're having a book club around inside of Verbal to Visual, where we all read and sketchnote the same book. But in addition to her putting out a podcast, she also kind of has like an essay form of the podcast. So that's what I typically do. I typically read the essay form of it each week. And I was reading that this morning, and one of the tips or things mentioned in it was like, if you're thinking about starting a new project, make sure you've allotted 150% of the time you think you need for it. So it's like that new project, it's going to take more time than you expect. So like if you do decide to take it on, make sure you've blocked out, like kind of in your schedule somewhere, 150% of that time. And if like you can't do that, or if you don't want to do that, it's probably not worth maybe pursuing that new project right now.
Well, this is an interesting. How do you figure out like what even 100% of that time would be? It's like I was having a conversation this morning about the like my projected growth of the podcast, and the person who said, "Oh, is that what you're projected at?" I'm like, oh, I don't know. Like it grew by X amount last year. Will it grow by X amount this year? Maybe, I guess. This whole thing of like projections, right? This seems like something that business runs on, that as a solo creator, I have never really figured out. Do you have any tips on how you do that kind of projecting, like how much time this will take you kind of thing?
Yeah. Well, so for me, the way I tend to think about time, I've kind of had two different approaches that could potentially go hand in hand. One of them is like committing to a publishing schedule with your work. So like projections around how much money you're going to make, your listener growth. Like I've never tried to do that because there's just so much uncertainty. And that's out of your control, right? Like how much your thing grows is out of your control. What you create and how frequently you create, that is in your control. And like one angle on that is like sticking to a publishing schedule where you say, I'm going to make a podcast episode each week. Or three. And like, okay, you commit to that. And then, as you do that a handful of weeks, you get a sense for, okay, what does it actually take for me to do that in a given week? And how much time do I need to set aside? Or maybe you just like, maybe you don't do that. And as the publishing schedule like reaches its deadline, it's like, oh, I've got to push it today, or I've got to push it over these next 2 days to get this thing out in time for my publishing schedule. Right. Earlier, like in my creative journey, I found that helpful because I think I did need a little bit of a push just to get comfortable publishing things.
Sure.
I feel less interested in that approach now. So as opposed to like trying to stick to a publishing schedule, it's more, I guess it's more just about like my daily schedule.
Gotcha. Yeah, you have a certain amount of time during the day. What you're doing now takes this much time. You project that the thing you're going to do is going to take X amount of hours. And then she says add another 50%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, well, yeah. And I guess like
that all makes sense.
It's all in that 150%. It's really just like it's a guessing game too with that. But like what I like about the daily schedule is that like you're committing certain chunks of your day, certain blocks, and it doesn't have to be like down to the minute. I at most do like, 30-minute or hour long chunks. So it's like, what do I want to commit to today? And, the things that fill my blocks are, checking in with the community inside of Verbal to Visual, scheduling events, prepping for future events. So it's like inside verbal to visual stuff is one of the big chunks each day.
Right.
Doing my own book reading and sketchnoting is another chunk or two. And then usually like working on some long-term project is another chunk. So right now my long-term project is the course digital sketchnoting, which has been kind of on the back burner for a while, but probably fairly similar to your timing with Awaken Your Myth that you mentioned last week.
Yeah.
Like the, second quarter or second third of 2023 is when I want to do another run through of that course digital sketchnoting and have kind of like the final video lessons for that published. Because right now it just lives like in a kind of workshop mode.
Yeah.
But I think what I want to focus on here is one of those components of this daily schedule I mentioned is reading and sketchnoting books.
Right.
Which is, if folks have been following along, like that's kind of what I've landed on for now as my YouTube focus, creating visual summaries of books, which is a fairly long process, right? To read and sketchnote an entire book. And it's kind of a two-stage process, like I'm reading while I'm sketchnoting, or I'm sketchnoting while I'm reading, rather. So that takes time. The reading process is slower. I'm doing a lot of processing of the ideas. So I have to do that through the entire book. And then I come back and think about, okay, what do I want to highlight in this visual summary, this video about the book? So that's one established project and product that I create. The one that I wanted to chat about is a potential second product from that. So one of these is going to be like, okay, I then make a visual summary for YouTube. Within that visual summary, there's quite a bit of filtering that I'm going to do. There's a lot. So there's likely going to be a lot of interesting ideas from the book that I choose not to include in that visual summary, just because I kind of want it to be like a 10 to 12 minute video, not like a 45-minute video. But I spent so much time like reading and thinking about and working with those ideas that I had been thinking like, okay, maybe there's something else I can do after I finished a book. And the idea came up
I'm intrigued.
just yesterday. We've been going through, inside of Verbal to Visual, we've been doing a live run through of the course Learn in Public, which has been cool to hear about, like what other sketchnoters are up to, like the topics and the skills and the projects that they're building, and how different people are starting to share their work, share their creative journeys online. Some YouTube videos, some blog posts and things like that. And in that context, Medium came up as a place where writing can live. And Medium is a platform that I've spent some time on in the past. I think you mentioned reading some of my
I read some of your Medium posts, and I thought they were really good.
Thank you.
And I my difficulty with Medium is that every time I've subscribed to it, I don't wind up keeping it because it has...
And by subscribe, do you mean the $5 per month subscription?
Yeah. It runs on clickbait. It really does, because people are trying to grab that money. And so everything, if you're not going there for specific people, then I almost wonder if something like Substack wouldn't be a better fit for someone like you, because see, I would go for you, but I won't go back. I don't know. That just Medium feels like,
this is interesting,
a little gross to me, and I've wanted to like it because I like the idea of it, right? Yeah. But I just recently started to what do you call it? Sponsor someone on Substack. I pay for someone's newsletter on Substack. Much like you, they're a creator that I really like. I want to support their work. We have a friendly sort of, we follow each other on Instagram and TikTok, and that kind of like, I'm not like in real life friends with this person, but I love what they do and I want to support them. So I was happy to spend, I think it was $70 a year on a Substack subscription. And with Substack, I don't like wade into the morass of what Medium is, where they're just like, here, have all this too. I'm like, I don't want that. I just want this thing. So anyway, I don't mean to take too much time with this, but that was something recently that came up for me, Medium versus Substack. I like Substack much better as just a consumer. So.
Yeah. No, I'm glad this came in, because just to complete the thought, like the idea then would be to also write an essay after finishing the book, starting with what excites me about the essay.
I support this idea.
Thank you. It'll be good to like flesh it out too, because these details about like where it lives and maybe what to do with it will be really helpful.
Yeah.
But specifically, I think what I want to do with those essays is kind of start with an idea or a few ideas from the book that I didn't talk about in the video, but that still like resonate with me and I want to explore in writing. But the writing will include sketch notes like throughout it, a paragraph or two, and then a visual paragraph or two, and then a visual. That's what the current essays look like on Medium. But I also want to like take that as an opportunity to maybe bring in ideas from like past books I've read or past podcasts. Like I have a big archive of sketch notes and lots of ideas within them. So like spend some time looking through my past work and the things that I've explored, and maybe bring some other sources in. Just to like give it, I don't know, a broader feel, or like explore a question or a topic in more depth from different angles, and also bringing in my personal experience.
And you're so good at that, and that personal experience, I think, is the thing we all tend to just throw in last as like a little spice, because we don't want to like have it be too much about ourselves, and B, it's just sort of like easiest to kind of like get into expert mode and not really share about your own struggles. But I know that the best content, the most interesting, real, relatable stuff that transforms people's lives is connecting those two, and I constantly have to kind of like, I struggle with this myself, like being open in that way. And I think you strike a great note there. This idea is fantastic.
Well, it honestly kind of, I feel like there's some parallels with some of what I've seen you do on TikTok and YouTube, in some of your, in some ways they're like mini visual essays sometimes, when you do a little bit of storytelling about your day or about your past, and then you weave in mindfulness or something concrete also to like help the viewer. So I think you strike that chord in some of your work too.
Yeah, that's what I try to do exactly. And I think that this is it's super important, because it really it's what people are, it's what people connect to, and makes all the information like sink into a deeper level. I just know this, my own experience, and the people who I've been so influenced by, people like you. That's so great. So yeah, I'm very excited about this. Sorry, I keep.
No, I'm glad you're excited. One thing I'll mention, just as a potential long-term vision for this, it would be to eventually compile those essays into a book. Potentially like a self-published book is what I might explore initially. Maybe try to get a publisher. I don't know if I've never done that, and I don't know if I want to explore that world, but like Um, so compiling it into a book, and obviously that book would just be like, it wouldn't be a how to sketch note book.
Mm-mm.
It would just be like a collection of essays, and I imagine I'd be able to like identify a theme uh, about those essays potentially, or it could be really broad theme. Um,
Sure.
but yeah,
So
bringing them
these would
together.
be less like text versions of the sketchnoting of a book and more like exploring some of the ideas that the book piqued your, where your interest was piqued.
Yeah,
I love that idea. So good. Yeah.
yeah. Um, so that is a potential long-term vision, and like, sometimes I think about, well, um, does it make sense to? I think I need some sort of like. I think it would be hard for me to like just write essays in private until I have a collection of 10 or 12 of them, and only then publish it as a book. Like
Mm-hmm.
that might be a little bit of a too long term of a payoff, which is
Right.
why finding some place to publish the essays first,
Yeah.
um, and then maybe bring them together into a collection. I don't know if you see any potential conflict there. If like,
No,
let's just say I went with Medium and published all my essays on Medium, or maybe let's stick with like Substack or ConvertKit, like a paid newsletter.
yeah. I would do a
Publish them
paid
there
newsletter.
first,
I would do a
and
paid
then
newsletter.
a year from now, I also collect them into a book and
Mm-hmm.
publish that as a book that people can purchase.
Perfect.
Does it not seem weird to have like, I
No, no,
guess
no,
it
no,
would be
no.
two
It's the
two
way to
different
do it.
paid ways to access the same material potentially.
Well, what's going to happen is like people like me are going to pay for your Substack or ConvertKit, probably not your Medium.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to, when the book comes out, I'm going to be like, oh, awesome. Yes, of course I want that hardcover book, or I want to give this to someone, because a book is a completely different beast. It's not just a physical version of the content. It
Yeah.
is something you can gift. It's something you can
Mm.
hold. It's something you can sit down with a cup of tea on the couch in a way that a newsletter isn't quite the same thing, right? Um,
And I've
do you
never had
use?
that with any of my verbal to visual stuff. Like I've never had a physical product or physical book that people
Yeah,
could get, which is like an opportunity at some point in the future for like specifically a maybe how to sketch note related thing. But right now I'm feeling pulled in like this type of direction for a physical book.
I think if this is the direction you want to go in for your first book, great. And if you want to write a sketchnoting book after that, awesome. Do you have to? No. You know. Are you using ConvertKit now?
Yeah,
Okay, so that's kind of easy then.
it
Um,
would be. I think
you don't
I'd
even
be
need to.
more interested. I haven't looked too much into. Well, I would probably start there. I think I would like to look at what um, I'm thinking about the average person on the internet. Um, if if there's a difference in familiarity with these platforms or likeliness to subscribe, if there's something about Substack being a little bit more in like the zeitgeist right now,
Hmm.
um, if people would be more likely to sign up for a paid Substack newsletter versus a paid ConvertKit newsletter.
There's really no reason you couldn't do both. I mean, once you just publish.
That's
You could
true. I
you
think
could
I would
hit.
only want them to be in one place though.
Then I mean, what's nice about ConvertKit is you've got all these emails already.
Yeah.
You just send them the a synopsis of thing for the full one. Please subscribe to my paid newsletter. It supports my work. I really appreciate it. It's a soft pitch to people who are already interested in you, right?
Yeah.
And then I've never actually signed up for a paid ConvertKit newsletter either. And I will tell you that one thing I don't like about ConvertKit is their archive pages are doo doo.
Mm.
So like to just go and use their archive, it's crap. It's not customizable. I don't know if it's the same for paid newsletters, but I don't use the archive version for my monthly free newsletters that I send out. Whereas the Substack app is really nice. I don't remember there being any friction at all in signing up for this thing, and that whole journey started from an Instagram post. And I'm normally very fussy about sign up friction. I want it to be. I want Apple big. Pay. That's what I want. I just want one button. I'm in. Done.
Yeah.
And I think Substack was kind of like that. So, and Medium wasn't as good. And then, of course, like I said, just everything, all the other clickbait nonsense. And and I don't want to, I want to support the person I'm supporting. I don't want to get access to a bunch of garbage for $5 a month. I'd rather have you have that whole $5, than to pay $5 for and then have to sift through that to get to your stuff. So,
and I would assume with Substack that, so what I'm imagining here is rather than a monthly subscription, it would be, since I'm intentionally not sticking to a publishing schedule, I could potentially shift that for the essay. I don't know, but so let's say I don't go with a specific publishing schedule for these essays. It's only like each time I finish a book. I assume with Substack and ConvertKit that it can be per email subscription as opposed to a monthly subscription. Does that sound right, or what do you think?
I don't know. I signed up for a year. I think you can do monthly or yearly. I don't know if there's a per email thing. I was just opening up Substack to have a look at it. And they, I'm looking at it now, realizing they are trying to get me to look at some other stuff, but I think maybe I subscribed to that, like Substack reads. But it's just, it's got an inbox kind of. Have you ever used Substack?
I haven't, no. So maybe I should. Someone yesterday mentioned Austin Kleon's paid newsletter through Substack. So maybe I sign up for that to get a feel for what it's like. Yeah. And then see if that's a good fit for me.
That's always a great way to figure out if the platform is something. That's how I ended up going with ConvertKit. I was just like, okay, I like the way creators are integrating it into their stuff. I liked the vibe of the company. I liked what the owner. I read the book the owner wrote, and so sign up for something on Substack. I'm gonna really give 2 thumbs down to Medium though. So I would. Yeah, I think better Substack or ConvertKit.
I think that makes sense. Yeah, and I'm kind of picturing whenever I do, in terms of promoting this. Whenever I finish a book, I think I would kind of work on the 2 things simultaneously. I'd be working on the visual summary for YouTube while kind of writing the essay. And then
But here's the thing. If the essay isn't completely dependent on the book, you could commit to a publishing schedule of once a month.
That's what has been in the back of my mind since we kind of started thinking about this subscription model, which would then basically I think what I would want to do is commit a daily time block to writing. The way I'm thinking about it right now is I wouldn't commit one of my daily time blocks to writing until I'm done sketchnoting the book. So it would be I finish the book and then I commit some time to video and writing. And then once the essay is done, I'm not writing daily again until I finish the next book. Maybe I could experiment with having a daily writing block and seeing what that feels like. And if the pace of a monthly essay feels sustainable.
Well, I think two things here that might give you a better book is not tying every essay to a book. You know, like you were saying before, you have lots of old sketch notes from lots of different things, different books. If the essays are on a theme that the book covers, then you can have, you know, if it takes you 2 months to read the book, you can have your essay talk about one of those themes that's in the book and mention that, but then bring in other stuff that you have, other stuff you've sketchnoted, other ideas. And that way also, I think you're going to have maybe a more compelling collection of essays that aren't, you know, really tied to a particular book.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
That. It does. Here's a question. Do you think, like, for people signing up for a paid newsletter, do you think weekly is expected?
No. When I signed up for Ileana's newsletter, I don't know how many she's going to send out. She wasn't like, oh, you're going to get one every week, or it's just like, I'm writing, you know, if you want to read what I'm writing, I would love your support.
Yeah.
I was just like, okay, I'm in. I don't, you know, you don't really even need to be like, it doesn't need to be a product, you know, it's just, I'm writing essays and, you know, I'll do synopses of these essays for free in my my regular email list. If you want to read the full essays, please think about supporting my work on Substack. Easy peasy, you know, like whatever pitch feels good for you. I mean, Ileana's was literally like, it's hysterical. You know, she's just like, I'm writing, you know, like, but you know, like, support me. And she's just got this great vibe, you know? So I'm like, yes, absolutely. I will support you. So I paid $70 for a year. I don't know if I'm going to get 70 or 7 or 3, but I don't really care. You know, it didn't come with a publishing schedule expectation. And you could say, you know, like, I'm going to try and do about one a month, but you know, these things take time and I have kids. You can just be brutally honest.
Yeah.
I think that's sort of refreshing, really.
Yeah. This is good stuff.
And even if the Substack or ConvertKit, you know, paid newsletter doesn't take off like you'd hoped, you're going to have these essays to turn into a book at the end. Mm-hmm. So you can get, you know, you've got an extra chance to kind of turn it into something. And over time, if you commit, this is what I found with the podcast. Over time, when you commit to a publishing schedule, you're going to find an audience where you're not, you know. So you could commit to doing it for a year, and at the end of a year, you'll know, and you'll have your first book, and maybe it turns into something else. Maybe it's only one book. Maybe it's a book a year for the rest of your life. Who knows, right? But that committing to some sort of a publishing schedule, you know, I think I told you, it took me 6 weeks to get my first 1,000 downloads for the podcast. And it takes 3 hours now, you know? Mm-hmm. So you just don't know until you do it for a while.
Yeah.
You know? So.
Yeah.
But I love this idea, and I'm certainly going to get whatever you put out. So you've got your first person.
Hey, I appreciate that.
Yeah. And I'll tell other people about it. I love what you do.
What do you think? So this is one of those conversations too, where, like, you know, the benefit of a conversation like this, first of all, is that ideas that I hadn't thought of are already cropping up, like the paid newsletter idea. So, you know, I'm starting to think about next steps for me. Mm-hmm. One of which will be simply like, give some time, ruminate on this over the next 24 hours, like see what else crops up. So that's one potential next step. Another is maybe if it feels doable with my schedule, start committing a 60-minute writing block to each day, and see how that feels. Because like part of it, you know, sometimes I romanticize the idea of being a writer, but often I have found that when there's time and space for it, like when I build it into my day, I really enjoy the writing process. So it's like, if I can get to that place where an hour-long writing session a day, it's going to be hard at times, but if it's also like fulfilling, that in and of itself is maybe a reason to like commit to one block of it a day. And then I also have this kind of output or a place for that writing to go.
Start smaller, you know, like it doesn't have to be an hour. You know, like whenever I've gone through this multiple times, and I'm about to start again because the last time I got on a streak of writing, I blew it. I start with like 500 to 700 words or half an hour, whichever comes first.
Gotcha.
You know, and they don't have to be great words, and it doesn't have to be, you know, but it does have to be the half an hour. Like maybe I don't get to 500 to 700 words, but I do hit the half an hour. Then I'm like, okay, I can get up and leave. Tomorrow might be better. But I think that for me, I have to go small when I start. Otherwise I get overwhelmed and I'm like, nah. And even with small, sometimes I get overwhelmed, but I don't know about you.
Yeah. And I think that's something to like experiment with. Maybe it's 30 minutes. Maybe it's a full hour.
Mm-hmm.
I guess another potential next step for me is like subscribe to a Substack.
Yeah, right. Austin Kleon's is a great one. I mean, I don't subscribe to it, but I love his stuff, and I know you do too. Yeah. So, you know, you could probably find a lot of inspiration.
I'm already imagining like imposter syndrome coming up once I see what Austin Kleon is doing. The potential for like the thought of, oh man, what I'm imagining or what I'm going to make isn't going to be as good or as valuable as Austin Kleon.
Absolutely not.
That's what he is doing.
Right. Yeah. No, that's not true at all.
That's a danger of anything, like looking at your peers, but I think that's overcomeable.
But if you were to ask me, whose stuff do I like better, yours or Austin's? I like your stuff better. I like Austin Kleon's stuff. It's very good. It's great. But I like your stuff as much or better. So, you know, for what that's worth.
Yeah. No,
that's
helpful to hear.
Yeah.
Do you have any other suggested, 2 questions for you, any other suggested next steps and or other tips about writing, since you have you've done a bunch of writing?
Yeah, I think the thing that works for me the best is just to write what is on my mind that day, to start with that, you know, to just get it out. Because so much of what just the first draft is garbage. You know, all the good stuff is in the edit, right? So I try to just write whatever today feels like. If today feels like a story about a bird that flew from Canada to the mountain here, I'm going to write that. If it's about going up, a fictional story about going to visit the neighbors to help cut firewood, I'm going to write that. If it's just like, blah, I fucking hate it, then I'm going to write that. And I kind of try to just like get the pump going, you know, and then I go back through it later and I find the good stuff. And I would encourage you to kind of like just look at, you know, maybe even more than Austin's thing, like maybe find somebody on Medium who you would follow. You know, and see, you know, maybe I'm just an old bogey who can't stand the clickbait on Medium.
No, I looked at it today for the first time in like a year, And it still has that feel of like
Yeah.
clickbaity, really, like, 3-minute reads, 2-minute reads, like fluff. I think there's a lot of fluff there.
Lots.
But I think there are, I think I want to try to find, I probably won't do Austin Kleon, but I am going to find, try to find someone who's doing something a little bit more essay-like. And I kind of want to find someone who's like not a white dude doing creative work on the internet. Like, I want to find someone who's like sharing different perspectives.
Yep.
I think like that's one thing I miss about Twitter, is like coming across the experiences and perspectives of someone who doesn't look like me.
Yeah.
And I vaguely remember some of those people like starting Substacks at that time. So
great.
I might go and try to find some of those folks. Yeah.
I'd say that sounds like a really good start right there, and I think it's a great idea. I think it's something you could do that fits with what you're doing now without adding a ton of work. Yeah, I like this one. So I'm curious to see where you go with it.
Yeah. Thank you, both for the general encouragement and also the specific suggestions around where it could live.
Yeah.
Yeah. It also fits with like the thing coming up next with the live run through of Learn in Public inside of Verbal to Visual. We've got one more event where I have suggested that people now, like we've been chatting about it for like 3 weeks. The goal or assignment, if you will, for the last session is to like, okay, sketch out what your Learn in Public process or what your Learn in Public cycle looks like. So mine is going to look, basically like this. Like I read in Sketchnote a book, I make a YouTube video. Well, here's where, we'll play around with the maybe detaching the essay from a specific book.
Or not, whatever feels best. The other thing you could do is sketchnote the essay when it's done. Like the way you're sketchnoting the books. You could add that even as another video thing for YouTube. Who knows? You're going to have some sketch notes in it already. It's going to be
some there already, but
a unique piece of writing. There might be a third promotional option there by bringing that to YouTube to direct people who would like to read the essay to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Some good options. Well, I think that gives me some good ideas to play around with and some things to do next. This is probably a good time to start wrapping it up for this episode. Anything else you feel like bringing in today before we say goodbye to the viewers and listeners?
No. I think I'm. I have two more businessy meetings.
It's a meeting,
and then
heavy morning. It's like your entire first half of the day is like.
I know.
4 meetings today, you mentioned?
Yeah, which is not that's not my jam. I'm like not a business, and they're business meetings too. So when I show up on a Zoom at a business meeting, the business people are always like, "Oh," and I'm like, "Yes, I know. I'm not a business person. It's obvious."
Or at least you don't look like one, which is not to say that you aren't one, because clearly you are.
Well, okay, I guess I'm just. I don't consider myself one, but yeah, I pay the bills, right? So I guess I am one. I'm a business person.
Yeah. You're.
Yeah. So no, I think
might not be the stereo like what people imagine in their mind when they think of business person, but you.
Business Gandalf.
You're it, and you're expanding what people think of when they think of business person.
Yeah. How about you? Anything you want to close with?
I don't think so. I think I'm, all the things we've talked about are like bubbling and will continue to bubble. And I'm sure come next week, I'll have something I think we'll have solidified or, percolated in a particular direction. So I'll just kind of look forward to sharing this the evolution of this branch of my work. Like, I feel like, it took like 7 or 8 episodes for me to kind of land on the type of YouTube videos that I want to make. I feel good about that and like the direction that's going, even though it's time consuming. And now it's like, okay, let's do that same sort of evolution of what the writing component of my work might look like. So we'll keep coming back to it.
Super. Well, I can't wait to hear get the update next week. I'll look forward to chatting with you then.
Yeah, same goes. Can't wait to hear your deep dive next week. So we'll plan on seeing you then. Thanks, Eric.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye, y'all.